Welcome back. James Comey filing a lawsuit against a GOP subpoena, calling for him to testify behind closed doors. The former FBI director is insisting that he appear in a public hearing for the sake of transparency. My next guest says that Comey is demanding special treatment and trying to run out the clock until the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees shift to Democratic control come January. Joining me right now in a Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Republican Congressman from Virginia, Bob Goodlatte. He is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Good to be with you, Maria, and your viewers.
Do you really think you are going to be able to speak to Jim Comey this upcoming week, sir?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I expect that later today, Mr. Comey will withdraw his motion to quash our subpoena and agree to voluntarily appear for a transcribed interview. That, of course, remains to be seen. It hasn't happened yet, but the counsel for the House and the counsel for Mr. Comey have been working cooperatively, and I expect that will happen. If it doesn't, there is a hearing set tomorrow morning, and based upon the precedent, including very clear United States Supreme Court precedent, I'm confident the court will rule in favor of the House and protect the House's right to issue subpoenas and not allow witnesses to dictate the terms under which they would appear before the Congress.
Well, let me just go back to what you just said, because this is breaking news. You are expecting Jim Comey to withdraw his motion to push back and, in fact, sit for a private hearing sometime later this week. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's the expectation. That's been the basis of discussions that are going on, and we'll await it actually happening, but that is what I believe will happen.
Why do you believe this?
Because the parties have been working together. I think that the strength of the presentation made by Tom Hungar, the House counsel, on Friday, and the House's brief is very compelling, and I think that that is where the parties are headed in their discussions right now.
Where is this going to get you regardless, Mr. Chairman? I mean, look, in all due respect, we have been with you, this program has, all year, as you have scrutinized the handling of the Hillary Clinton investigation and the Trump-Russia collusion investigations of the FBI and the DOJ. And here we are, literally 3 or 4 weeks before you step down, and now you subpoena these two. I mean, couldn't you have done this sooner? What took so long?
Well, we certainly couldn't have done it sooner. We've now examined thousands of pages of documents, searched through nearly 1 million documents, interviewed 16 other witnesses. Mr. Comey is, as the former FBI director, at the center of both of these investigations, launched in 2016 with regard to Hillary Clinton and the Trump campaign. And it's the culmination of that. We've been asking for Mr. Comey to appear for a few months now, and when he refused to appear voluntarily for a transcribed interview, I was forced to issue a subpoena, which he now has sought to quash. That's, in my opinion, inappropriate, and now it's time for us to conduct that interview. After that interview, we do need to wrap up, but I will also say that there are always more questions that people will have, and that's why I'm pleased that Senator Lindsey Graham, who's expected to be the next chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Chairman Ron Johnson of the Senate Oversight Committee have both expressed very strong interest and intentions to me to continue to pursue this matter. So we do need to wrap it up. We do need to get this information out to the public, and we are hard at work on doing that. But Mr. Comey's testimony is a critical part of that.
What are you going to find out from Jim Comey? What are the most important questions you need to ask him?
Well, I'm going to save those for Mr. Comey, but you can imagine that you have a 400-page Inspector General's report. You have the testimony of 16 other witnesses, all of which were taken in private transcribed interviews. You have the thousands of pages of documents. Those have generated literally hundreds of questions that need to be asked, and we are prepared now with some very experienced former prosecutors like Trey Gowdy and John Ratcliffe and very experienced investigative staff to ask those questions and get to the bottom of this answer. We want to follow this matter. We want to follow the truth where it leads, and then we want to make these transcripts available to the public so that they can draw their own conclusions about what occurred in 2016. I'm concerned, and it's my hope that by doing this, we will prevent it from happening again in 2020 or hopefully ever again. The FBI was misused in 2016, and this is an organization that is very, very important. Every day, thousands and thousands of great FBI agents and others protect us from terrorist attacks, prevent crimes, solve crimes. This organization has been hit hard, and they need to be rehabilitated. And let me just say, Christopher Wray, the new FBI director, I think has done a job of making major personnel changes at the top and be rehabilitated. And let me just say, Christopher Wray, the new FBI director, I think has done a job of making major personnel changes at the top and in terms of taking the Inspector General's report to heart and making changes so that this kind of thing won't happen again.
Mr. Chairman, stay with us because we've got more to talk about on this, as well as want to get your upcoming comments that you're going to be talking with the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, as well, on whether conservatives are being censored online. We'll get your take on a potential government shutdown as well. Stay with us. More with Bob Goodlatte when we come right back on Sunday Morning Futures.
We saved hundreds on our
Comey to withdraw his motion not to appear and, in fact, to appear in front of your committee later this week.
That's correct. That's where the discussions are headed. I think that will be made official with the court soon. If for any reason it doesn't happen, then the parties will be back in court tomorrow morning. And as I indicated earlier, I think that the legal precedents are very, very powerful. This no district judge has ever quashed a subpoena issued by the House Representatives, and the Supreme Court has been very clear on the sanctity of those subpoenas.
Jim Comey's talked a lot about going public versus private. Explain the difference, because I know that if you're in a private setting, he can just say, oh, that question is confidential and classified, I can't answer it. So can you get more answers in a private setting versus a public setting?
Yes, because the format is one where our counsel will ask questions for an hour. The Democrats will have an opportunity to ask questions for an hour, then back to the Republicans and back and forth until all the questions have been asked that need to be asked. Whereas in a public hearing, if people have watched those, they know that each member gets 5 minutes. You can't even ask more than 2 or 3 questions, and certainly can't ask any follow-up questions in that fashion. So someone like Trey Gowdy or John Ratcliffe, who are experienced prosecutors, and others who are experienced investigators, can't pursue the long lines of questions that need to take place. That's why this needs to be done in that setting. However, we share Mr. Comey's interest in transparency. We expect all of these interviews that we have transcribed thus far to be made public, but we have committed to making his public very quickly after the interview takes place. So the public
when you interview him this week, I mean, that's sort of the final thing. I mean, the American people want accountability here, Mr. Chairman. Do you think this investigation goes away in the House once you step down?
Well, that's a very good question, because if I were a Democrat, I'd be concerned about some of the actions taken by Mr. Comey and others in the FBI leading right up to the election, announcing a reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email, and then announcing again immediately after that it was being shut down. I mean, there are a lot of things that we've learned in the background of that are going to come out as a part of this that I think should be of interest to every American, and every American should not want the FBI being weaponized, as some have claimed, by the Democratic Party when they, created the situation in which a dossier was then used by the FBI to get a warrant from the FISA court. These are all things that should concern every American in terms of protecting their civil liberties and making sure that their elections are free and fair, and we don't want to see the FBI handling investigations like they were in the future.
Well, look, I mean, it's a shame that it has come to this, where you only have a few weeks left, and now you're seemingly going to speak to him, because we know that there was FISA abuse, and we know that there was leaking against the law. So we'll be watching that. I am really interested in seeing whether or not he is going to keep that promise and speak to you later this week.